Here we are at our last 2 days of thesis. We're going to do these at Bali Pare. Believe me when I say that it was hotter in Dago than here. But we'll see. We'll see when we get to about noon how it pans out. So what I've done is I've actually created or put together a set of really diverse topics for Bali Pare here. And today is pretty interesting because we've got academic research. We've got, next is elderly care using AI and robotics. Then we have an ecology topic, and then we're going to end today with something of a philosophical topic from Clara on the multiverse. Anyway, Fiona's been, is it better up there now, Fiona, or is it just as bad?
No, it's okay. Because it keeps sliding off as well. So, yeah, it's okay.
So just move that out of the way if that's more distracting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do what you need to do.
Okay, so our first presenter is Fiona. I've had a lot of fun with Fiona. She's had she's one of the ones that writes like a 40-page paper or something like that, and so the key is always trying to be concise and get everything down into a readable portion. But it's actually, she does a really good job. Fiona says, first, I would like to thank God for his guidance throughout this thesis journey and for allowing me to meet teachers and friends who have been supportive of me. I'd like to thank Mr. Wade for his patience on guiding and helping us throughout the year. I would like to thank Mr. Felix for being my advisor and for dedicating time from his busy schedule to assist me with my thesis. Lastly, I'd like to thank my parents for always being there for me. All right, Fiona's topic is, her title is Knowledge is an Open Door, Removing Barriers to Scientific Research Journals Worldwide. Let me get the timer set up and I'll tell you when you can start. I don't know if you'll be able to see the timer or not, but we'll see. All right, you can start whenever you're ready.
When we think about searching for research data for chiral ilmia or for thesis, what's the first thing that would come to mind? Let me make a wild guess. You'd open a journal, copy their DOI, and paste it into Sci-Hub. Boom! The paper you need suddenly becomes so accessible. I get it. I've done it too, and I bet almost everyone here has done it as well. It's quick, it's easy, and it feels like the only way to access essential academic information when you're locked out by paywalls. But here's the catch. What if I tell you that using Sci-Hub is technically illegal, and countries like UK and Austria have banned its usage? So, what happens now? Are we supposed to abandon our research or pay those outrageous fees? This is exactly where open access becomes so important. Open access serves the same purpose as libraries did in the past, giving everyone access to knowledge. The concept of library has existed since the ancient times, serving as a repository for invaluable knowledge for the masses. Biomed Central initiated the first open access publishing model in response to inaccessible knowledge for everyone. Following this initial effort, numerous universities supported the open access movement, organizing workshops and developing protocols. Like a river breaking to a dam, the movement gained momentum, flooding the academic world with unrestricted knowledge. Open access offers two key advantages: practical and principle. Practically, open access makes research freely available online, increasing visibility and citations for authors, while principle concern the excessive profits of subscription journal publishers who impose high prices that conflicts with the interests of scholars and their institutions. Open access journals are required to meet essential criteria, including being scholarly and digital, while allowing authors to retain their copyrights. Despite numerous initiatives aimed at addressing issues within the scientific community, the replication crisis remains a significant concern, which is worsened by current ethical standards, biases, and the publish or perish culture. International organizations like UNESCO have developed guidelines to try to make better open access practices, while countries like Austria have supported open access by providing funding for research and development. Nonetheless, these past actions have experienced major setbacks as they have not been effective in solving this issue. If this issue is not solved adequately, consequences may occur to the involved parties and the public. One of these consequences is the inconsistency between researchers, which can arise from unreliable data replication, which can lead to confusion among individuals. Open access is the bridge that connects the public to the vast ocean of scientific knowledge, ensuring that discoveries are not kept behind walls, but shared for the benefit of all. Without it, open access remains locked away, like a treasure chest at the bottom of the sea, valuable but useless to those who cannot reach it. With that, open access to scientific research is essential to solve the underlying issues within the scientific community for three main reasons: proper implementation of ethical guidelines for researchers, eradicating any biases, and renewing the reputation of research. A survey conducted by Nature in 2016 revealed that 70% of researchers failed to reproduce experiments performed by others. Replication is crucial as it allows access to primary data like history and medicine. Open access acts like a library that is always available to everyone, giving everyone access to knowledge. This supports transparency as it allows researchers to replicate research just as libraries help readers comprehend what they read. Replication and reproducibility are further supported to two types of reproducibility: method and result reproducibility. Method reproducibility ensures that there's enough detail about a study procedure so that the study could be exactly repeated. Result reproducibility, on the other hand, involves achieving the same outcome through similar methods and procedures. Open access also gives researchers, if research were openly available, it will be easier for researchers to replicate data, and thus researchers would be more accountable. Open access allows anyone to examine results and verify data, but sadly, that level of transparency is still rare. Some researchers manipulated their data to produce results that look good to the public. This kind of misconduct, whether it's falsification, fabrication, or plagiarism, threatens the integrity of research. In fact, experts estimate that the US alone sees about 1,500 serious misconduct cases in a year, such as the case of the worldwide pandemic, COVID-19. In the rush to publish what we call now as speed science made things even worse, with flawed data slipping to peer review. Such as the case of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Due to unregulated standardization during the pandemic, it was found to be effective in some countries while ineffective in others. Picture that. The vaccine working in Europe but not working in Africa. That would be a blunder. Researchers are leaving out huge numbers of population just because of accountability issues. This does not save lives, it kills them. To further escalate the reproducibility of research, open access allows researchers to access international collaboration between researchers with diverse backgrounds, ensuring future mentorship, and career growth. A study surveyed 1,286 fellows and grant recipients, revealing that 95% of them had engaged in at least one international collaboration in the past 5 years, with 89% of them considering it essential for their careers. Open access gives researchers unlimited access to data. Without it, science moves slowly, stuck behind costly paywalls. Knowledge thrives like the sea, vast and ever moving, not when it's trapped behind a dam. Open access removed those barriers, allowing researchers everywhere to ride the wave of shared discovery. Furthermore, research conducted in multiple locations can lead to more accurate data results, enhancing the overall quality of the study. As open access does not involve any fees, researchers from low and middle income countries can participate fully in replication studies. Though open access could improve transparency and accountability, biases around the community are still apparent. Bias in research is like a shadow that distorts the truth, creeping into conclusions and altering perspectives. Open access is the sunlight that can dispel these shadows. First, selection bias. Imagine this. You're conducting a study to examine the effects of indoor air quality on childhood asthma. Ideally, you want a diverse range of participants, families from different various backgrounds and income levels. But what happens? Only families, often with higher socioeconomic status, decide to take part. That is what exactly happened in a real study. The result? The data skewed towards experiences of wealthier families, failing to capture what lower income households may experience. So, the study may show good results, but would those results really apply to the general public? Probably not. That is the danger of selection bias. It threatens the validity of research and its ability to be generalized. Open access can help mitigate selection bias by allowing researchers to address the gaps in representation. Next, confirmation bias is the tendency to seek out or interpret information in a way that confirms our existing beliefs. Let me tell you a story. For years, doctors believed that stress and diet were the primary cause of stomach ulcers. The idea that bacteria, specifically Helicobacter pylori, might be responsible, that was dismissed. Even when researchers Barry Marshall and Robert Warren presented evidence in the 1980s, their findings were dismissed by the medical community. Why? Because it challenged decades of conventional thinking. It wasn't until then, in 2005, when they won the Nobel Prize, that the truth began to gain independence. But think about that. How many people suffered in those 25 years just because the scientific community clung to its biases? This bias still persists today, as researchers may selectively report significant findings while ignoring non-significant results, particularly in competitive academic backgrounds. Open access could reduce this by ensuring a more independent verification and ensuring a more comprehensive scientific discourse. Above these, open access could reduce the spread of publication bias, which opposes threat to the validity of research. This is when only studies with positive or statistically significant findings gets published. A shocking example, antidepressant research. According to the FDA, nearly one-third of the studies on antidepressants were not published at all. Imagine that. 30% of the entire study completely missing. Now, why does that even matter? Because hidden in those 30% could be crucial information that might save life. But because of publication bias, that information is kept out of sight. As a result, real-life people are put at risk. Lives are on the line, not because we lack of science, but simply because of publication bias. Publication bias is closely related to funding bias as they affect the likelihood of positive findings. Industry-funded research are more likely to produce and publish results positive to what the sponsor would want. Complications in publication bias and funding bias could happen as they further distort the evidence base. As researchers are pressured to publish data specific to what the funder wants, the integrity of research is heavily challenged. Open access helps counter this by acquiring the publication of all data, positive or not, ensuring a more accurate and scientific landscape. Open access resolves challenges in democratizing knowledge and refashioning how research is shared, used, and accessed. However, it does more than increase visibility. Open access empowers authors to gain control over their intellectual property rights, which are crucial because authors gain exclusive controls over their creations. This enables them to profit from their work. Thus, they could recover the costs occurred in science and development. Having intellectual property rights is like a house owner who has a right to sue a robber who steals all the valuable things they had in their house. First, let's talk about the harsh academic reality in the infamous publish or perish culture. This is only when studies, this phrase captures the growing pressures on scholars to publish frequently, not to advance knowledge, but to secure jobs, promotion, and funding. This pressure can compromise quality and lead to misconduct. A Chinese biochemist, Shiming Fang, exposed this kind of widespread fraud throughout his platform's New Threads. His investigations revealed that scientists, driven by the intense pressure to publish, were falsifying data and producing poor and inaccurate data results. In the rush to publish, researchers were skipping crucial steps like securing licensing or ensuring proper attribution. Multiple platforms allow researchers to share early revisions of their work, called preprints, to allow formal feedback before formal publication. One keystone in intellectual property rights is proper attribution, and open access significantly enhances this by global visibility of authors' work. For instance, the Public Library of Science enforces strict citation policies and allows its authors to be credited whenever their work is used. This ensures that authors receive the recognition they deserve, thus building their reputation and contributing to their intellectual property rights. A popular case is the Human Genome Project. This project, which successfully mapped the entire human genome, was made possible through extensive international collaboration facilitated by open access platforms. The connection between open access and intellectual property rights lies in the fact that open access allows innovation to thrive through the free flow of ideas while allowing intellectual property rights intact by ensuring licensing and proper attribution. Proper attribution is further enhanced by providing writers with intellectual property ownership through flexible licensing. Creative Commons licenses are the hallmark of open access publishers, since licenses would allow authors to gain control over their rights and define terms use of their work, thus providing clarity and legal protection. One prominent case is the CRISPR-Cas9, a gene editing technology. The patent landscape of the CRISPR-Cas9 has been complex, with the involvement of multiple institutions. Through different licensing agreements, the inventors have been able to secure patents that allows them to remain as authors while ensuring how similar discoveries were kept into various industries. However, some people might believe that by supporting open access, publishers cannot receive a stable income since their primary source of income comes from paywall articles. While this is true, publishers can still receive a stable income through article processing charges, which are often covered by institutions or funders like the Wellcome Trust. This clarifies that open access does not avoid revenue from publishers, but it shifts the funding source from readers to institutions, funders, and researchers. Others worry that unethical publishers or readers might misuse open access. However, the main concern is the misuse happening now due to restricted access, seen in the widespread illegal use of Sci-Hub and the rise of predatory journals. Strengthening legal frameworks, raising awareness, and promoting better open access practices are the key to preserving research integrity. Throughout this thesis, we have explored the pressing need of open access in scientific journals. We discussed how it concerns the resolution of the reproducibility and the replication crisis in the scientific community, of the inherent biases in research, and the safeguardings of researchers' intellectual property rights, fostering a more transparent and inclusive scientific landscape, and restoring the crumbling ethics in the scientific community. Imagine a world without free access to journals or articles. A world where every piece of information that matters is hidden behind paywalls. That world would be signified with the non-existent advancement of science, where knowledge is restricted to certain circles while the rest struggle with the rising crime rates as the illicit circulation of paywall article continues. This is where promoting for open access is crucial, not only for ourselves, but for the society. As the saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. Neither are libraries. The realization of open access for all journals will not occur overnight. It will require years of collaboration and dedication to bring this vision into life. But it is not impossible, which is why I'm asking all of us to take part in this journey. There are resources at our disposal to bring light into this pressing issue. Sign the petition, start the campaign, and continue spreading information about it. Let us work as a community to create a society where knowledge is freely available to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Because at the end of the day, all truth is God's truth. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Good job. Let's see. Our panelists today are Ms. Denise and Mr. Tony. I'll let Mr. Tony go first.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Well done, Fiona. Great job in your delivery. I really enjoy how you present, how you elaborate and give your arguments. Well done. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you,
Okay, and I also want to add to that. Your topic is such a unique topic. It's really, really good to have variation of topics in the thesis. And you have done a comprehensive study about this topic, yeah? Well done, again. Now, I would like to ask a few things to clarify. First thing, would like to ask, I think you mentioned a little bit, but since open access journal has been around quite many years, would you share how can this, in quote, publishers be sustainable? The open access journal can be sustainable.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tony, for the question. So in a way, publishers of open access could be sustainable by allowing readers everywhere to be able to access data to their platforms, like websites. And further than that, open access publishers could receive by the enhanced significance of technology in the future years. They could also experience easier access to data and could also see that publishing these data would not require significant article processing charges, which has been a hindrance for significant researchers, such as the researchers of Indonesia, because article processing charges could cost quite high, as I have discussed in my refutation, if I'm not mistaken, where researchers are very, very burdened to pay these article processing charges. And to keep the sustainability of open access through publishers could see that through innovation and technology in the next couple of years, where there will be huge advancement, is that they will make it easier, and peer review processes and all of the screenings before formal publication could be made a lot easier, but still in a way that researchers could be more accountable and the research data could be verifiable, strengthening the overall integrity of research, but in a faster way, so that these researchers shouldn't be burdened by these hard regulations of publishing.
Yeah, so you mentioned that basically you said open access journal can be really rigorous and maintain its integrity and so on, right? The things that I would like to highlight is about economical sustainability.
Yes.
Do you have the data about how this publisher survive economically?
Okay. So I do not have the exact amount of data of how these publishers thrive through economic sustainability, but I have covered in my refutation and my first refutation, if I'm not mistaken, that even though without open access itself, researchers are still required to pay these article processing charges. And I already stated that researchers like, if I'm not mistaken, researchers like Springer and Nature, just from article processing charges themselves, has received $582.8 million just from article processing charges. And without article processing charges, these publishers could also receive other incomes through partnership or publication. But although their primary source of subscription journal are hindered, that a significant amount of money could enable them to thrive through sustainably. So I personally feel like that amount of money that they gain just exclusively from article processing charges are enough, because that's just a huge sum of money.
Yeah, very good. Let's move forward about, there are people always says the price of a product can determine the quality of the product, right? So how can free access be so good?
Okay. So first, I would like to clarify that with open access, of course, this system is not perfect. And we cannot, and there's no system in this world that is perfect without hindering any corruption or without hindering any misuse in the data. However, the way that open access also, you could see open access is in a way like this. Since researchers, if for example, I as a researcher, I want to produce a data. And of course, I would choose top publishers. Why? So that I could gain credibility and more citations. Thus, I could gain a better reputation. So if me as a researcher, definitely I want to publish my data with higher end publishers. Definitely, because that's what I want. And in a way, these higher end publishers would have a lot of peer review processes in them. Thus, the data that's produced by these publishers would definitely be accountable. And when we, as a reader, would like to search all these data, the first thing that would come up is definitely these articles from significantly and high-end publishers. So we as readers would, of course, definitely take the first one out of the rest, rather than we restricting and scrolling down through like various data. If we see a data at the top and we know that is a well-known publisher, then we could receive their trust from these. In another way, if researchers do not want to publish their data from publishers, even if they self-produce their data, such as the green open access type that I've mentioned, is that if they would not gain as much visibility as authors that would publish their data from high-end publishers. So in a way, yes, we cannot migrate every single inaccurate data results, but we could see from the perspective of the readers that could view more accurate, accountable data results from publishers.
Yeah, still, I still unclear of how to maintain high quality of a product for open access compared to the high paid journal. Because when we buy a product, we want to get the best. How can you ensure the open access still competitive enough to the high end or Q1 kind of journal?
Okay, so thank you for the question. So there are different types of open access, as I have mentioned. There are gold open access, hybrid open access, and green open access. Gold open access would mean that and it will be definitely at a higher price for these researchers to publish article processing charges. But with gold open access, this will allow researchers will go through peer review instantly, and thus enabling them to publish their data instantly in open access platforms. So there will be definitely researchers from open access publishers would also have strict guidelines and policies, which is supported by the DOAJ, which is the guidelines for ethical publishing. And this is required for all publishers. So it will be really hard for publishers like predatory journals, as I have mentioned, to publish data that just goes without peer review or without standardization. Because there's a lot of government policies and international organizations that clarifies that this kind of misconduct is not right, and they have imposes strict consequences towards this kind of policy. So that's the first about gold open access. So directly promoting open access through open access publisher. Hybrid open access means that current subscription journal publishers, if the researchers want their research data to be open access, they could pay these subscription paid journals to make their research data more open access. And green open access is the one that, as I have mentioned, is the self-publisher author.
Yeah.
So in a way, definitely, as the standardization of gold open access, hybrid open access, and green open access, so it could also see like which one is more high-end quality,
Yeah.
because there's still peer review in each and every process.
Very well. So
Time
you
to-
have that.
We need to move on to Miss
Yeah.
Denise.
Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you, Mister.
Yeah. Well done, Viona. Man, I'm just going to say your strength of arguments, your delivery, your physical body, your memory. Woo!
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Fives, all fives.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
So now I do have a few questions to challenge your premise. And I really like the idea. It's this idea that's existed for a long time in the scientific community that says, how do we share information with everyone for the pursuit of science and in the pursuit for the good of mankind? And it's a very noble, high calling, right?
Yes.
And so we can see all the way, even back, I remember in World War II, there were scientific communities that were struggling between communism and Nazi Germany and the Allies and trying to figure out how to share information. And it was very frowned upon because it was like, no, that's the enemy. Don't share with them. And they were like, we're superseding, political divides. We're in the pursuit of humankind and good, right? So those are all beautiful ideals. But let's face the reality. There's competition in the world. Countries want to be better than other countries. They want to be number one economically. I can think of competition, say, between China and the United States, right? And so I'm wondering, how is an open access system going to ensure the integrity and ensure that intellectual property rights, and the attributions are enforced across the world? I'm not really clear on that. Like, how is that going to be enforced? Is it possible?
Okay. So thank you for your question. So there are actually a lot of because open access has gained a significant recognition from worldwide users. So there are tons of international organizations that are curated to specific issues in this in open access. So this could be from international organizations and also specific government intervention. So first from international organization. As I've mentioned before, for citations and intellectual property rights, there is an organization called PLOS, or in a way, Public Library of Science. So Library of Science ensures that there is proper citations. And in a way that why does open access would increase citations or would increase intellectual property rights? The reason is when you're basically making research freely accessible online, researchers would definitely want to gain credibility and they want to gain access, they want to gain like ownership from their data. Why? Because if they don't, then their data could be misused by readers or by
Right.
publishers claiming that their data is their own.
Right.
So when there's open access and when there's a lot of data that is openly worldwide available, researchers would also think by themselves that, oh, then I need to put citations, I need to gain licenses, or I need to ensure that there's IPR in my research so that there are no future research that could misuse my data
Okay.
or
Yeah.
say that my data is like mine.
Yeah, I get that.
Okay.
So, I mean, ideally, there's an organization sort of supervising that and sort of making sure that it's happening. But I'm thinking, you know, one country's civil law compared to another country's civil law, I'm just not sure how that would be realistically enforced if there are violations. But I'll let that pass. So I have another question. So you mentioned this idea of this push to publish, I think pressure to publish. What did you call it?
Publish or perish culture.
Yeah, publish or perish. I love that. Yeah. So this publish perish mindset, and I'm wondering. I don't think that that's coming from publications. I think the pressure is coming usually from a research university who is also competitive, trying to have a leading edge, trying to make its name and saying we're better than all the other research universities in this field, in this area. And so they're placing these basically like criteria, like here's your job description, professor, you've got to publish so many things in a year, right? So if there's all this pressure from the university to make publications, how is open access really helping that publish or perish mindset? I'm not really clear on that.
Okay. So open access could help these. I feel like what you're talking about is mostly about, if I can clarify, it's mostly about like the interaction between researchers and their institutions. Is that correct?
Right, like the
Okay.
university is saying, you're the professor, you have to publish so many things within so many years, and so they're rushing to publish, and you were talking about how that sometimes can be poor quality and things like that. So I'm just trying to understand, so how is open access helping that situation?
Okay. So open access could help the situation is that the regulation of open access by themselves is make sure that every data, whether it's positive, whether it's the first trial, second trial, third trial, is published. And these institutions sometimes have the conflict. Then, if the first trial are published, then my name, my reputation would be hurt, because that means, oh, I cannot directly gain the conclusive the right conclusion towards this research that I'm finding. And definitely with the competition of institutions, definitely in like pharmaceutical science or anything, they
Right.
would be the first one to get access to that research.
Correct.
So these publishers could affect the likelihood of the researchers.
Yeah. Okay. And my last question is, I think your argument is basically right now, people are already violating the rules. They're using Science Hub, right? So like your sort of your basic premise argument in your opening is everybody's doing it anyway. So why don't we just legalize it and make it something that's more regulated and managed since people are doing it? And so I guess I want to ask you about the legitimacy of that argument. That argument's been used before in places like legalization of marijuana in the United States. And people have said, if you just legalize marijuana, then you'll actually just, you know, people are already doing it anyway, so quit arresting them and throwing them in prison because it's just such a harmless drug, it's no problem. Well, research has been very conflicting in that area because it's shown that actually crime rates have increased in a lot of states who have legalized the process. So what I'm wondering is, by legalizing the access to all research, is it really going to ensure higher integrity, or is it going to just corrupt the process?
So the fact that I could also cannot hide the fact that with open access, there would definitely be misconduct in the processes between multiple people from various levels. And with restricted access, there's also a lot of misuse. So in both ways, there are misuse. However, I feel like personally that by advocating for open access, it is a risk that I'm willing to take. Why? Because as I mentioned before, that multiple researchers from low and middle income countries can actually gain access to these researchers.
Right, but is it a risk that other nations, the Western nations in particular, are willing to take? That's
Yeah.
the question. And I don't know.
So another thing, as you have mentioned, that I haven't addressed yet, is that there are actually competition between Western countries about open access. And if I'm not mistaken, currently right now, UK is at the highest one. Indonesia used to be the second. However, because of article processing charges, they are not able to compete. So I also feel like if it is open access, then researchers from Western countries could also gain more reputation and thus more credibility, and see that, oh, like my research is significantly citation throughout different various platforms of research environments. So in a way, I feel like, oh, then it could be beneficial to both sides. So not only for like researchers in low and middle income countries that cannot gain access towards this due to income, and these higher income researchers who can actually give access to data could actually share this because it's according to the Bible as well.
Thanks.
Okay, I have a couple. Good job, Fiona. I have a couple of
Thank
questions real
you.
fast. When I was a graduate student working on I was in a PhD program and doing research and trying to get, working on something to be published. We didn't have this problem. We didn't have it because we really didn't have the internet, right? In fact, what we all did is we went to an academic library and found everything we needed. If I'm studying biology, I go to the biology library at the University of Texas, and it has published copies of every important journal there is. Shouldn't you be, instead of talking about making journals open access, shouldn't you just be talking about e-libraries? In other words, academic libraries online where we can get a membership and see anything we want instead of making the journal open. What do you think?
Okay, so thank you for your question. So first, I would like to talk that sometimes e-libraries are not as popular as current publishers or current access to data. So when you see about e-libraries and Google Scholars, which one me as for example, a university student would go to? Definitely Google Scholar, not e-libraries. Because e-libraries have gained less popular in the past years due to it being quite not fashioning. However, the reason why I'm mostly supporting for open access rather than just e-libraries is that open access is more diverse in a way that it will be easier for researchers from all around the world to publish their data and giving everyone access to knowledge. So although e-libraries and open access gives the same purpose, as I've mentioned in the past, the reason why open access is more better, I would feel like, is because it comprises of different aspects, from journals to books to different various aspects. However, if e-libraries, I feel like they would mostly specifically publish books on specific criteria or research, not really mostly towards journals.
Okay, good job, Fiona. I have one more question, but we're completely out of time. But the question is real simple. Are there organizations, when I'm trying to write a paper, I'm just looking for data. I'm looking for something that will support me. Are there really organizations that try to replicate important studies? Or, because in my experience, everyone's just glad there's a study out there. And something like the fluctuation test that was done in the 1960s or something, it wasn't proven. It was in all the biology textbooks until 1990s when someone tried to replicate. It's a very simple experiment. So is there really people that replicate big studies like that?
Okay,
It can be a short answer.
Okay, so I wouldn't say that big studies, significant, popular studies would be replicated, but more to newer studies that people haven't known yet. Because that means when I can replicate this, nobody could actually know because it's just a new thing. Thus, I could gain more popularity, even though doing less work. So.
Okay, good. Thank you, Fiona. Good job. You did a great job. All right, we're going to meet somewhere for photos. Where do we meet for photos? Up at the front
Thank you.
on the stage. We'll meet with
Oh, sorry.
panelists, friends
Thank you,
and
Miss
family,
Ed.
advisors up here on the steps. And then in 5 minutes, we will start with Clancy.